The moment you walked through those office doors this morning, something shifted in the atmosphere that only you could feel. Your chest tightened inexplicably as you passed the break room where your colleagues were laughing, their conversation dying the instant you appeared in their peripheral vision. You told yourself it was paranoia, that you were imagining the sudden coldness, but your spirit knew better. Your spirit has been screaming at you for months now, sending you alarm signals. Your logical mind keeps trying to rationalize away the knot in your stomach when certain co-workers approach, the inexplicable exhaustion after team meetings where you said nothing wrong but felt everything wrong, the way your creative ideas seem to evaporate from your mind the moment you share them, only to reappear weeks later in someone else's presentation with their name attached. This is not coincidence. This is not professional competition. This is spiritual warfare disguised in business casual attire, and you are the target because you carry something they can never manufacture, something they can only attempt to steal. What you are experiencing is frequency theft, and it operates on multiple dimensions simultaneously. In the physical realm, it manifests as workplace jealousy, as passive-aggressive emails, as strategic exclusions from important meetings. But in the spiritual realm, something far more sinister is unfolding. Monitoring spirits, low-frequency entities assigned specifically to track chosen ones, have identified you as a carrier of divine frequency. They have embedded themselves in your work environment, using envious humans as their physical anchors, their cameras, their data collection portals. Every strange look, every cold shoulder, every inexplicable act of sabotage is not just human pettiness. It is a coordinated attack on the anointing you carry, an attempt to drain the prophetic creativity that flows through you before it can manifest into the breakthrough God has assigned to your hands. That is why in the trilogy, The 3 Keys to a Prosperous Life, the link is in the pinned comment, I explain how frequency theft operates through proximity vampires who position themselves in your daily path, specifically to siphon the divine downloads meant for your destiny. The narcissistic colleagues surrounding you are not random assignments in your life story. They are strategically placed opposition designed to test whether you will guard your frequency or carelessly broadcast it to those who have no permission to access it. These individuals operate under a consciousness that can only be described as parasitic. They do not create, they copy. They do not innovate, they imitate. They do not generate original thought. They harvest it from those around them who still have connection to the source. And you, chosen one, you are connected to the source in ways that terrify them, even though they could never articulate why. Your presence exposes the emptiness of their existence, the hollowness behind their carefully constructed personas. You walk into a room, and without saying a word, without trying to prove anything, your authentic frequency reveals their mask. And rather than remove their mask and face the painful work of becoming real, they choose instead to attack the mirror, to extinguish the light that reveals their costume. The co-worker who suddenly started dressing like you did not consciously decide one morning to copy your style. They are operating under a spiritual compulsion to absorb your essence because their own identity is a vacuum. The colleague who asks you detailed questions about your methods, taking careful mental notes with that slightly tilted head and fake fascination in their eyes, is not genuinely interested in learning from you. They are executing intellectual supply extraction, a narcissistic tactic where they steal your processes, your frameworks, your creative approach, then repackage it as their own innovation. You have watched this happen repeatedly. You have shared ideas in casual conversation that somehow became company initiatives with someone else's name on the proposal. You have taught someone a technique that suddenly made them the office expert, while your contribution was memory hold, erased from the narrative as if you never existed. This is the withholding protocol, a psychological warfare tactic narcissists deploy to destabilize your sense of reality. They delete your contributions from the story, not because they genuinely forgot, but because acknowledging you would force them to admit they are not the genius they have convinced everyone they are. The withholding protocol operates through strategic amnesia. When it is time to give credit, they suddenly cannot recall who originated the idea. When it is time to distribute recognition, your name mysteriously does not appear on the list. When promotions are discussed, your accomplishments are somehow invisible to those making decisions, yet your mistakes are catalogued with photographic precision. This is not natural forgetfulness. This is calculated erasure, an attempt to gaslight you into believing your contributions were never as significant as you remember them being. You feel crazy because that is exactly what they want. The gaslighting is not an accidental byproduct of workplace dynamics. It is the primary weapon in frequency theft. If they can make you doubt your own perception, doubt your own value, doubt your own memory of events, then they can drain your confidence, which is the battery that powers your creative frequency. A chosen one who doubts themselves is a chosen one whose anointing is temporarily blocked, whose prophetic downloads are scrambled by the static of insecurity. And that static, that self-doubt they manufacture in you through systematic invalidation, creates an opening for them to steal the frequency that should be manifesting through your unique expression. Watch how they react when you enter a room. The micro-expressions happen so fast, most people miss them, but you have learned to read energy before words. The slight tightening around their eyes, the almost imperceptible pursing of their lips, the way their body angles away from you, even as they force a smile. These are the physical manifestations of spiritual resistance. Your frequency is so incompatible with theirs that their body reacts before their conscious mind can control it. They are experiencing you as a threat at a cellular level because the divine light you carry exposes the darkness they harbor. It is not personal, even though it feels personal. They do not hate you as an individual. They hate the God frequency you represent, the authentic power that reveals their borrowed authority. The contemptuous smirks when you speak in meetings are not about your ideas being weak. Your ideas are often the most innovative in the room, which is precisely why they must be mocked, dismissed, or stolen. The smirk is a defense mechanism, a way to socially signal to others that your contribution should not be taken seriously, thereby protecting their own status in the hierarchy. Narcissists experience workplace environments as stages where they must constantly perform superiority. Your genuine competence threatens the performance because it reveals that competence is not something you can fake. It is something you either have or you do not. And they do not have it, which is why they must tear down anyone who does. The fake compliments that land with cold energy are perhaps the most sinister weapon in their arsenal, because they confuse your discernment. Your logical brain registers the words as positive. They said your presentation was great. They said you did a good job. They even used enthusiastic punctuation in their email. But your spirit felt the ice, felt the hidden blade behind the smile, felt the resentment wrapped in praise. This is the poisoned compliment, a narcissistic tactic where they comply with social expectation to offer recognition while simultaneously transmitting contempt through their energy. The words say one thing, the frequency says another, and you are left feeling disturbed, unable to explain why praise made you feel worse instead of better. This confusion is intentional. They want you disoriented, second-guessing your intuition, wondering if maybe you are too sensitive, too paranoid, too suspicious of people who are just being nice. But you are not wrong. Your spirit is functioning exactly as designed, as an alarm system that detects danger before your mind can articulate it. The poisoned compliment is danger. It is an energetic attack disguised as kindness, and your spirit knows the difference between genuine recognition and strategic manipulation. Trust the disturbance, trust the discomfort, trust the way your stomach turns, even when their mouth is smiling. Your body is receiving data your eyes cannot see. In the spiritual realm, what you are experiencing as workplace jealousy is simultaneously unfolding as a legal battle in the spiritual courtroom. This is not metaphor, this is mechanics. There is a dimension of reality where your life is being documented, where every action is recorded, where rights and permissions govern what can and cannot happen to you. Monitoring spirits function as surveillance systems in this realm, assigned specifically to track chosen ones who carry anointing that threatens the kingdom of darkness. These are not demons in the classic horned and pitchfork sense that religious tradition has painted. These are low-frequency intelligence entities that operate as spiritual hackers, attempting to access your downloads, map your timeline, and sabotage your destiny before it manifests. They cannot enter your life without permission, and this is the warfare mechanic most chosen ones do not understand. Permission is granted not necessarily by you, but by those around you who have opened doors through sin, through agreement with darkness, through the conscious or unconscious decision to operate in envy, hatred, or malice. Your narcissistic co-worker, who stares at you with barely concealed resentment, is not just being rude. In that moment of envy, they are opening a portal, granting permission for monitoring frequencies to use their consciousness as a data collection point. They become the camera. They become the recording device. They become the spiritual spy positioned in your daily environment to log your moves, analyze your patterns, and transmit intelligence back to the enemy's strategic command. This is why you feel exposed even when you are doing nothing wrong. You are being watched from dimensions you cannot see with natural eyes. The stare that lasts too long, the way they track your movements across the office, the strange intensity in their gaze that feels invasive beyond normal human interaction. These are moments when they are functioning as spiritual cameras. The monitoring spirit is using their eyes, their perception, their consciousness as a window to study your energy signature. They are cataloging your emotional responses, mapping your triggers, identifying your weak points, all to build a warfare strategy customized specifically for you. Every time they gossip about you, they are opening a legal doorway for accusation frequencies to enter the spiritual courtroom. In that realm, words carry weight as evidence. When they speak lies about your character, those lies are recorded as accusations. When they twist your intentions to make you appear incompetent or malicious, those distortions are filed as testimony. When they celebrate your setbacks, even quietly in their heart where no one else can see, they are casting a spiritual vote against your promotion. The spiritual courtroom operates on evidence, and your enemies are unwittingly providing that evidence, not just against you, but against themselves. Here is the prophetic reversal they do not see coming. The same courtroom monitoring your life is also documenting their crimes. Every stolen idea is logged as intellectual theft. Every act of sabotage is recorded as attempted murder of your calling. Every lie they told about you is archived as false testimony. They think they're getting away with their attacks because there are no immediate visible consequences, because management does not see it, because HR does not intervene, because you do not fight back. But the spiritual courtroom sees everything, and the case being built is not just for your vindication, it is also for their judgment. The envy portal is the mechanism through which frequency theft operates in real time. When someone looks at your success, your anointing, your favor with resentment, they create an energetic vacuum. In physics, a vacuum pulls, it sucks, it draws things toward itself. In the spiritual realm, the vacuum created by envy attempts to pull your blessings toward them. This is why you sometimes feel inexplicably drained after meetings where you presented brilliant ideas. You are not imagining the exhaustion. You were literally siphoned, your creative life force harvested through the envy portals that opened when jealous eyes focused on you with resentment instead of celebration. The monitoring spirits exploit these portals, using them as data highways to transmit intelligence about your next move. When you share your plans with the wrong people, people operating in envy consciousness, you are not just dealing with human gossip. You are feeding information into a spiritual surveillance network that will use that data to orchestrate obstacles in your path. This is why you have experienced strange patterns of interference, how doors that should have opened remained locked, how opportunities that seemed certain mysteriously evaporated, how timing that felt perfect suddenly shifted. You were being monitored, and your enemy used the intelligence you carelessly provided to ambush your advancement. But here is the divine protection protocol that shifts everything. The spiritual courtroom is not just recording attacks against you, it is also measuring your response. Every time you chose silence instead of retaliation, that was logged as wisdom. Every time you refused to gossip back, that was documented as integrity. Every time you blessed those who cursed you, that was archived as evidence of Christ consciousness operating through you. The courtroom is building a case, and the evidence overwhelmingly supports your promotion. What your enemies perceive as your weakness, your refusal to fight back using their weapons, is actually your strength, your decision to let the court handle what your hands cannot fix. The legal shift approaching your life is the divine response to the warfare you have endured. God is about to expose every hidden enemy, not to create drama, but to cleanse your environment before your elevation. The narcissistic colleague who has been stealing your ideas will be suddenly and publicly exposed. The co-worker who has been spreading lies about you will find their own corruption revealed. The boss who has been blocking your promotion will either be removed or have a supernatural change of heart where they suddenly see your value with crystal clarity. This is not revenge fantasy, this is prophetic pattern. The way God operates when the spiritual courtroom rules in your favor after years of silent litigation. You are entering a season where recognition is inevitable, not because you are chasing it, but because the anointing on your life can no longer be hidden. The shift has already begun in the spiritual realm. The courtroom has issued the verdict. The angels have been dispatched. The enemy has been served notice. What you see manifesting in the physical realm over the coming weeks and months is simply the execution of the judgment that has already been decreed. Your promotion is not a maybe, it is a certainty. Your vindication is not a hope, it is a done deal. Your enemies already feel the shift in the atmosphere, even if they cannot articulate what has changed. They sense they are losing their grip, losing their power over you, losing their ability to drain your frequency. The dream came suddenly, violently pulling you from the shallow edge of sleep into a hyper-real landscape where the rules of physics did not apply. Yet the terror was more tangible than anything you had felt in waking life. You were running, but your legs moved through invisible molasses, each stride requiring impossible effort, yet producing no forward motion. Behind you, something was chasing. You could not see it clearly, but you felt its hatred, its determination, its singular focus on reaching you before you reached safety. The landscape kept shifting, hallways turning into forests, buildings melting into deserts, your childhood home appearing then dissolving into a parking garage. Nothing made sense, yet everything communicated one message: you were being hunted and you could not escape. Your lungs screamed for air that would not fill them. Your muscles burned with exhaustion from running that took you nowhere. And when you tried to scream for help, no sound emerged, your voice stolen, your agency erased, your existence reduced to silent prey, fleeing a predator you could not outrun or outsmart. You woke gasping, heart hammering so violently you checked to make sure it had not physically broken through your ribcage. Your sheets were soaked with sweat despite the room being cold. Your body ached as if you had actually run for miles. And the terror, the pure, primal fear, did not fade immediately upon waking like normal nightmares do. It lingered, clinging to your consciousness like oil, tainting your morning with a dread you could not shake. You tried to convince yourself it was just stress, just your subconscious processing workplace tension, just random neurons firing without meaning. But your spirit knew differently. Your spirit recognized this was not psychological. It was prophetic. You were not having a dream. You were receiving a download about the spiritual reality you are navigating, a revelation about the forces pursuing you in dimensions you cannot see with natural eyes. The chase dream is one of the most common experiences among chosen ones under heavy spiritual attack, and it is not random symbolism your mind invented. It is a literal translation of spiritual warfare into imagery your conscious mind can process. The inability to move despite desperate effort represents the spiritual resistance you are experiencing in your waking life, the invisible barriers being erected by monitoring spirits to slow your progress toward destiny. The shifting landscape represents the enemy's attempts to disorient you, to keep you confused about which direction leads to breakthrough, to make you question whether you are advancing or just running in circles. The voiceless scream represents the silencing strategy being deployed against you in the physical realm, the way your contributions are ignored, your warnings dismissed, your prophetic voice suppressed by those who fear the truth you carry. The faceless pursuer is not a metaphor, it is a monitoring spirit, an entity assigned specifically to track you, harass you, attempt to exhaust you into surrender before you reach the next level God has prepared. These entities feed on fear, so the terror you felt during the dream was not just your emotional response, it was the actual frequency of the entity attempting to overwhelm your spirit with dread. But here is the prophetic reversal hidden in the horror of that nightmare. The fact that you woke up means the entity failed. It chased but could not catch. It pursued but could not capture. It terrorized but could not kill. The dream was not a prediction of your defeat. It was confirmation of your protection. You are being hunted because you are valuable. You are being chased because you are escaping. You are being targeted because you are advancing despite everything trying to stop you. The compliment landed like a stone in your chest despite the smile accompanying it. Your colleague leaned across the conference table with an expression of exaggerated warmth, their voice dripping with enthusiasm as they praised your recent project, telling you how incredibly creative you are, how they could never come up with ideas like yours, how lucky the team is to have someone with your unique vision. The words were perfect, the delivery was flawless, yet something about the interaction made your skin crawl. You forced a smile and thanked them, but as soon as they turned away, the smile dropped from their face in an instant, their eyes flashing with something cold and dark before they masked it again. You saw it happen. That microsecond where the real emotion leaked through before they remembered to perform friendliness. That glimpse of contempt, of resentment, of barely suppressed rage at having to acknowledge your talent. Hours later, you discovered they had taken your concept, the one they praised so effusively, and pitched it to upper management as their own innovation. They did not even change the core structure, just swapped out a few words, adjusted the presentation style, and claimed authorship of your intellectual property right to your face, without shame, without hesitation, without conscience. When you politely pointed out that you had shared this idea with them first, they looked at you with confusion, so convincing you almost doubted your own memory. They had no recollection of that conversation. They must have independently arrived at the same conclusion. Surely you could understand how two creative minds might think alike. The gaslighting was so smooth, so practiced, so confident that you felt yourself beginning to question reality, even though you absolutely knew they were lying. This is the poisoned compliment in its most lethal form, praise used as a distraction while they rob you blind. Kindness as camouflage for theft. Enthusiasm as the misdirection that lets them pick your pocket while you bask in the false warmth of their acknowledgement. The narcissistic colleague who operates this way is more dangerous than the one who openly opposes you, because at least with open enemies, you know where you stand. But the covert operator, the one who smiles while sharpening the knife, the one who compliments while calculating how to steal your crown, this is the Judas in your camp, the betrayer who eats at your table while planning your crucifixion. The poisoned compliment serves multiple functions in their warfare strategy. First, it disarms you, lowering your guard by creating the illusion of alliance. You are less likely to protect your ideas from someone who appears to admire you, less likely to guard your methods around someone who seems to be learning genuinely from you. Second, it confuses your discernment, creating cognitive dissonance between what you hear and what you feel. Your logical mind registers their words as positive, while your spirit screams warning. And in that confusion, you often override your intuition to give them the benefit of the doubt. Third, it establishes plausible deniability. If you later accuse them of theft, they can point back to their public praise of you as evidence they have nothing but respect for your work, making you appear paranoid, petty, jealous of their success with ideas you claim they stole. But your spirit was not wrong about the coldness behind their warmth. Your intuition correctly identified the poison in their praise. The disturbance you felt was not oversensitivity, it was accurate perception. You were detecting the frequency beneath their words, the true intention hiding behind performed enthusiasm. That flash of contempt you caught when they thought you were not looking was the real them, the hatred they usually keep hidden, the resentment they must constantly suppress to maintain their persona. They do not actually admire you, they envy you. And envy is not the desire to have what you have, it is the desire to destroy what you have so that the inequality stops painfully reminding them of their own emptiness. You were in a team meeting last month when your manager asked for creative solutions to a persistent problem. And before you could filter yourself, the answer came through you with startling clarity. You spoke with unusual confidence, articulating not just a solution, but a complete framework for transformation, a systematic approach that addressed root causes rather than symptoms. The room went silent in that way rooms do when something genuinely brilliant has been said. You saw the shift in your manager's posture, the sudden attention in their eyes, the way they leaned forward to capture every word. You felt the energy of the room change, felt something unlock, felt the download completing itself through your voice. And then you noticed your colleague 3 seats down, the one who usually dominates these meetings with verbose explanations of fairly obvious concepts. They were staring at you with an intensity that made your words falter, not the open-mouthed stare of genuine surprise or admiration. The cold, calculating stare of someone taking inventory, someone recording every detail, someone memorizing your framework so thoroughly they could reproduce it later as their own. 3 weeks passed before you saw your own idea again. This time, embedded in a comprehensive presentation your colleague delivered to senior leadership, complete with visual aids, statistical projections, and a proposal for implementation that positioned them as the visionary architect of this innovative approach. Your name appeared nowhere in the documentation. Your original articulation of the concept was nowhere referenced. It was as if that team meeting had never happened, as if your download had bypassed your mouth and implanted directly into their consciousness, erasing you from the origin story entirely. When you approached them privately to ask about the uncanny similarity between their presentation and your earlier comments, they seemed genuinely perplexed by your concern. They had been thinking about this approach for months, they explained with patient condescension. long before you mentioned anything vaguely related in that meeting, and frankly, they were a bit hurt that you would suggest they needed to steal ideas from anyone given their track record of innovation. The blatant copy is crazy-making because it requires you to prove something that should be self-evident. You know what happened. They know what happened. But in the absence of video evidence, time-stamped documentation, or witnesses willing to risk their own political standing by corroborating your version of events, it becomes your word against theirs. And they have something you do not, the audacity to lie with complete conviction. The shamelessness that comes from having done this so many times, they no longer feel even a flicker of conscience about identity theft. You hesitate, you second-guess yourself, you wonder if maybe you are misremembering the sequence of events. They do not hesitate. They do not question themselves. They present their theft with such confidence that others believe them by default, because our culture tends to trust certainty over caution. This is intellectual property vampirism, the systematic theft of creativity from those connected to source, by those who have severed their own connection and can now only survive by feeding on others. Your colleague is not consciously thinking, "I am going to steal their idea." At this point, the theft has become so integrated into their operating system, they genuinely believe the concept originated with them. They heard you articulate it. It resonated because it was genuinely brilliant. It lodged in their mind, where it merged with their thoughts until the boundary between your download and their consciousness blurred. And now they have convinced themselves through retrospective revision that they thought of it first. This is not merely lying. This is identity confusion at a core level, a fragmenting of self that happens when someone has been performing for so long they no longer remember who they actually are beneath the costume. But here is what they do not understand about stealing anointed ideas. The concept itself is only 10% of the power. The other 90% is the anointing attached to the one through whom it was originally downloaded. When they steal your framework and attempt to implement it under their own authority, it will not work the same way. It will function mechanically, but lack the supernatural grace that makes your executions effortless. They will have to push where you would have flowed. They will encounter resistance where you would have experienced open doors. They will exhaust themselves trying to force what would have manifested naturally through a